A woman weeps in a temple, her lips moving but no sound escaping. A priest mistakes her for a drunk. A child wakes in the darkness, hearing a voice that will change history. A king chosen by God himself descends into madness, jealousy, and murder. A shepherd boy stands before a giant, armed with nothing but 5 smooth stones and an impossible faith. And in the end, a desperate king will summon the dead from their graves, seeking answers from a ghost, only to learn that by morning he will join them. This is the first book of Samuel. This is the story of how Israel demanded a king and learned that getting what you want can be the greatest curse of all. This is a story of answered prayers and devastating consequences, of friendship stronger than blood, of power that corrupts and faith that endures. And it all begins with one broken woman, one impossible prayer, and one whispered name: Samuel. In the hill country of Ephraim, there lived a man named Elkanah. He had 2 wives, Hannah and Peninnah. Peninnah had children. Sons and daughters filled her home with noise and laughter. But Hannah had none. Year after year her womb remained closed. Year after year she watched Peninnah's belly swell with new life while hers stayed empty. And Peninnah, her rival, made sure Hannah never forgot it. Her rival provoked her severely to irritate her because the Lord had closed her womb. This wasn't occasional cruelty, this was relentless. Peninnah knew exactly where Hannah was wounded, and she pressed that wound every single day. Elkanah loved Hannah, but love wasn't enough. He couldn't understand her grief. "Hannah, why do you weep? Why is your heart sad? Am I not more to you than 10 sons?" A husband's love, however deep, cannot fill the void of a mother's empty arms. Have you ever wanted something so desperately that it consumed you? Have you ever prayed the same prayer so many times that the words felt worn out? That was Hannah. Every year the family traveled to Shiloh, where the tabernacle stood, the holiest place in Israel. And there, after one particular feast, Hannah could bear it no more. She rose from the table, she walked to the temple, and she began to pray. This was not the dignified prayer of someone going through religious motions. This was the raw, desperate cry of a soul at the end of its rope. She was deeply distressed and prayed to the Lord and wept bitterly. Her body shook with sobs. Her lips moved frantically, forming words that had no sound. And then she made a vow, one of the most radical vows a mother could make. "O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look on the affliction of your servant, and remember me and not forget your servant, but will give to your servant a son, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor shall touch his head." She's not just asking for a child. She's promising that if God gives her a son, she will give him back. She will dedicate him as a Nazirite, set apart for God's service from birth. This is either the faith of a saint or the desperation of a woman bargaining with everything she has. Perhaps it's both. Now Eli the priest was watching this strange woman. He saw her lips moving. He heard no words, and he assumed the worst. "How long will you go on being drunk? Put away your wine from you." You're in the deepest, most sincere prayer of your life, and a priest accuses you of being intoxicated. But Hannah didn't crumble. She explained, "No, my lord, I am a woman troubled in spirit. I have been pouring out my soul before the Lord." Pouring out my soul. This wasn't ritual. This was Hannah turning herself inside out before God. Eli understood. "Go in peace, and the God of Israel grant your petition." Something shifted. Hannah went her way and ate, and her face was no longer sad. She hadn't received her son yet, but she knew that God had heard her, and the Lord remembered her. 4 simple words that changed everything. In due time Hannah conceived, she bore a son, and she named him Samuel, which sounds like the Hebrew for heard by God. Every time she spoke his name, she was declaring, God heard me, God answered me, God remembered me. For the first few years, Hannah kept Samuel at home. She didn't go up to the yearly sacrifice. She told Elkanah, as soon as the child is weaned, I will bring him, so that he may appear in the presence of the Lord and dwell there forever. These were borrowed years, and she knew it. Every moment with her son was precious precisely because it was temporary. She had made a vow, and she would keep it. The day came. Samuel was weaned, around 3 years old. Hannah brought her son to the temple at Shiloh. For this child I prayed, and the Lord has granted me my petition. Therefore I have lent him to the Lord. As long as he lives, he is lent to the Lord. And then she did what she had promised. She left him there. She had waited years for this child. She had wept and prayed and bargained with God, and now she gave him away. But Hannah understood. Samuel was never really hers. He was always God's. And so she worshipped. And the words she spoke have echoed through millennia, a song of praise that would later inspire another young mother named Mary, carrying another unexpected son. My heart exults in the Lord. My horn is exalted in the Lord. My mouth derides my enemies because I rejoice in your salvation. There is none holy like the Lord, for there is none besides you. There is no rock like our God. Hannah came to the temple empty and broken. She left with her arms just as empty, but her heart was full. She had given God her greatest treasure, and in doing so, she had found something far greater, the unshakable knowledge that He is faithful. Little Samuel stayed at Shiloh, ministering before the Lord in the presence of Eli the priest. A child in the temple, a candle in the darkness. He didn't know it yet, but he would be the last of his kind, the final judge of Israel before the age of kings, and his story was only beginning. But all was not well in the house of God. Eli had 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas. They were priests, but they were corrupt to the core. Now the sons of Eli were worthless men. They did not know the Lord. The sons of the high priest, men who stood daily in God's presence, did not know the Lord. Religion without relationship, ritual without reality. When people came to offer sacrifices, they sent servants to demand raw meat before it was offered to God. If worshippers objected, the servant would answer, "No, you must give it now, and if not, I will take it by force." By force. From people who had come to worship, in God's own house. And it gets worse. They lay with the women who were serving at the entrance to the tent of meeting. The holy place had become a brothel, and everyone knew. Eli heard about his son's behavior. He confronted them, weakly. "Why do you do such things?" It was a rebuke, yes. But where was the discipline? He warned them, but he didn't stop them. But they would not listen to the voice of their father, for it was the will of the Lord to put them to death. When men reject correction long enough, a point comes when correction no longer works. Meanwhile, Samuel continued to grow in favor with the Lord and with man, a single flame burning in a house full of darkness. Hannah had not abandoned him. Every year, she brought him a little robe she had made, a mother's love stitched into fabric. God honored Hannah's faithfulness. She bore 3 more sons and 2 daughters. Then came the warning. A prophet appeared before Eli with devastating judgment. "Why do you honor your sons above me? Honor your sons above me." That was Eli's sin. He chose his children over his God. "Both of your sons, Hophni and Phinehas, shall die on the same day." Both sons, same day. "And I will raise up for myself a faithful priest." God was already preparing a replacement. And the word of the Lord was rare in those days. There was no frequent vision. In a nation chosen by God, the voice of God had grown silent. The priests were corrupt, the people were compromising, but God had not abandoned Israel. He was waiting for the right vessel. That vessel was sleeping in the temple. The lamp of God had not yet gone out, and Samuel was lying down in the temple of the Lord, where the ark of God was. Picture it: the dark sanctuary, the flickering lamp, the ancient ark, and a young boy sleeping near the holiest object in Israel. Then the Lord called Samuel. No thunder, no earthquake, just a voice speaking a name. Samuel ran to Eli. "Here I am, for you called me." "I did not call. Lie down again." Samuel returned, and the Lord called again, "Samuel." Again he ran to Eli. Same answer. Now Samuel did not yet know the Lord, and the word of the Lord had not yet been revealed to him. The third time Eli finally understood. "Go, lie down, and if he calls you, say, 'Speak, Lord, for your servant hears.'" Samuel returned. He lay down. He waited. And the Lord came and stood, calling, "Samuel, Samuel." "Speak, for your servant hears." And God spoke, terrifying words. "Behold, I am about to do a thing in Israel, at which the 2 ears of everyone who hears it will tingle. I am about to punish Eli's house forever, because his sons were blaspheming God, and he did not restrain them." Imagine being 12 years old and receiving this message. Imagine having to deliver a death sentence to the man who raised you. Samuel lay there until morning, terrified, but Eli made him tell everything. Eli's response: "It is the Lord. Let him do what seems good to him." And Samuel grew, and the Lord was with him, and let none of his words fall to the ground. A new prophet was rising in Israel. The Philistines marched to war. The armies met at Ebenezer. Israel was crushed, 4,000 dead. But instead of seeking God, the elders had a different idea. "Let us bring the Ark of the Covenant here, that it may save us." They're treating the Ark like a lucky charm. They're not repenting. They're trying to manipulate God. Who carried it into battle? Hophni and Phinehas, the corrupt priests. When the ark arrived, Israel gave a mighty shout. The Philistines trembled. "The gods have come into the camp. These are the gods who struck the Egyptians." But the Philistine commanders rallied. "Be men and fight." And fight they did. Israel was defeated. 30,000 foot soldiers fell. The ark was captured, and Hophni and Phinehas died. Both sons, same day, exactly as foretold. A messenger ran to Shiloh. Eli was sitting by the road, 98 years old, blind, but his heart could still fear. "Israel has fled. There has been a great defeat. Your 2 sons are dead, and the ark of God has been captured." At those words, Eli fell backward. His neck broke, and he died. The news of his sons shook him, but it was the loss of the ark that killed him. Phinehas's wife, near to giving birth, heard the news and went into labor. She was dying. She named her son Ichabod, no glory. Her final words: "The glory has departed from Israel." In one day, Israel lost 30,000 soldiers, the ark, the high priest, and his sons. The Philistines carried the ark to Ashdod and placed it in the temple of Dagon, their chief god. The next morning, Dagon had fallen face downward before the ark. They set him back up. The next morning, Dagon had fallen face downward, and the head of Dagon and both his hands were lying cut off. Broken, decapitated, the God of Israel had humiliated Dagon in his own temple. Then God struck the people with tumors. They sent the ark to Gath. Same thing. They sent it to Ekron. The people cried out, They have brought the ark to kill us." For 7 months, plague followed the ark wherever it went. Finally, they sent it back on a cart pulled by 2 nursing cows. If the cows walked toward Israel, abandoning their calves against every instinct, then God had done this. The cows went straight toward Beth Shemesh, lowing as they went. They turned neither to the right nor to the left, crying for their calves, every instinct screaming to turn back, but they couldn't. The ark came home. God had returned in triumph, without a single Israelite lifting a sword. The ark was taken to Kiriath Jearim and stayed there for 20 years. For 20 years, Israel languished under Philistine oppression. Then Samuel spoke, "If you are returning to the Lord with all your heart, put away the foreign gods and serve him only, and he will deliver you." And the people listened. They put away the Baals and served the Lord only. Samuel gathered them at Mizpah. They fasted. They confessed, "We have sinned against the Lord." The Philistines heard and marched toward them. Israel was terrified. "Do not cease to cry out to the Lord for us." This time, they didn't reach for the ark like a magic charm. They begged Samuel to pray. Samuel offered a burnt offering and cried out to God. And the Lord answered him. The Lord thundered with a mighty sound that day against the Philistines and threw them into confusion. The men of Israel pursued them, striking them down. Samuel set up a stone and named it Ebenezer, stone of help. Till now the Lord has helped us. As long as Samuel led Israel, the Philistines were subdued. The nation had peace. But Samuel was getting old. Samuel made his sons judges, but they were corrupt. They took bribes and perverted justice. So the elders came to Samuel. "Now appoint for us a king to judge us like all the nations." Like all the nations, Israel wasn't supposed to be like all the nations. Their king was supposed to be the Lord himself. The thing displeased Samuel. Samuel prayed. God answered, "They have not rejected you, but they have rejected me from being king over them." But God would give them what they wanted. First, Samuel warned them, "These will be the ways of the king. He will take your sons for his chariots. He will take your daughters. He will take your fields and vineyards. He will take the 10th of your flocks, and you shall be his slaves. And in that day you will cry out, but the Lord will not answer you." But the people refused to listen. "No, there shall be a king over us that we may be like all the nations." And God said, "Make them a king." In the tribe of Benjamin, there was a man named Kish, a man of wealth and influence. He had a son named Saul, a handsome young man. There was not a man among the people of Israel more handsome than he. From his shoulders upward, he was taller than any of the people. The narrator wants us to see this man the way Israel would see him. Tall, striking, physically impressive, everything a king should look like, at least by the world's standards. Kish's donkeys had wandered off, a significant loss in that economy. So he sent Saul to find them. Saul took a servant and went searching. They passed through the hill country of Ephraim, through the land of Shalisha, through the land of Shalim, through the land of Benjamin. No donkeys. Saul was ready to give up. He told his servant, "Come, let us go back, lest my father cease to care about the donkeys and become anxious about us." But the servant had an idea. "Behold, there is a man of God in this city, and he is a man who is held in honor. All that he says comes true. So now let us go there. Perhaps he can tell us the way we should go." The man of God was Samuel. They didn't know it yet, but Saul wasn't finding the prophet. The prophet was finding him. The day before Saul arrived, God had spoken to Samuel. "Tomorrow about this time I will send to you a man from the land of Benjamin, and you shall anoint him to be prince over my people Israel. He shall save my people from the hand of the Philistines. for I have seen my people, because their cry has come to me." God had seen, God had heard. Despite their rejection, despite their demand for a king like the nations, God still loved his people. He would give them a king, but he would choose him. He would anoint him. He would use him to deliver Israel. When Samuel saw Saul approaching, the Lord spoke again. "Here is the man of whom I spoke to you. He it is who shall restrain my people." Saul approached Samuel in the city, not knowing who he was. "Tell me, where is the house of the seer?" "I am the seer," Samuel replied. "Go up before me to the high place, for today you shall eat with me, and in the morning I will let you go, and will tell you all that is on your mind. As for your donkeys that were lost 3 days ago, do not set your mind on them, for they have been found." Imagine Saul's confusion. He came looking for livestock, and this stranger is inviting him to a feast and casually mentioning that the donkeys are already found. Then Samuel said something even more astonishing. "And for whom is all that is desirable in Israel? Is it not for you and for all your father's house?" All that is desirable in Israel, the kingdom, the throne, the crown. Saul was baffled. "Am I not a Benjaminite from the least of the tribes of Israel? And is not my clan the humblest of all the clans of the tribe of Benjamin? Why then have you spoken to me in this way?" He wasn't being falsely modest. Benjamin was indeed the smallest tribe, nearly wiped out in a civil war just a few generations earlier. Saul had no reason to expect greatness. He was looking for donkeys, not a kingdom. But Samuel took him to the feast and seated him at the head of the table, above all the other guests, about 30 men. He gave Saul the choice portion of meat, the leg that had been set aside. Saul still didn't understand what was happening, but the next morning everything would become clear. At dawn, Samuel called Saul to the roof. "Go, stand here, and I will reveal to you the word of God." Samuel took a flask of oil, the symbol of divine consecration, and poured it on Saul's head. "Has not the Lord anointed you to be prince over his people Israel? And you shall reign over the people of the Lord, and you will save them from the hand of their surrounding enemies." He kissed him, a sign of homage, of allegiance to the newly anointed king. Then Samuel gave Saul a series of signs to confirm this calling. "When you leave me today, you will meet 2 men near Rachel's tomb. They will tell you the donkeys have been found, and your father is worried about you. Then you will meet 3 men going up to Bethel, carrying 3 goats, 3 loaves of bread, and a skin of wine. They will greet you and give you 2 loaves. Then you will come to Gibeah, where the Philistine garrison is stationed. As you enter the city, you will meet a group of prophets coming down from the high place, playing music and prophesying. The Spirit of the Lord will rush upon you, and you will prophesy with them, and you will be turned into another man." Turned into another man. This wasn't just a political appointment. This was a spiritual transformation. God was going to change Saul from the inside out, equipping him for the task ahead. When these signs meet you, do what your hand finds to do, for God is with you. God is with you. 4 words that would define Saul's success, and whose absence would define his downfall. Everything happened exactly as Samuel had said. Saul met the men at Rachel's tomb. He received the bread. He came to Gibeah. When they came to Gibeah, behold, a group of prophets met him, and the Spirit of God rushed upon him, and he prophesied among them. The people who knew Saul were astonished. "What has come over the son of Kish? Is Saul also among the prophets?" This became a proverb in Israel. The tall, handsome young man who had been out looking for donkeys was now caught up in prophetic ecstasy, transformed by the Spirit of God. When it was over, Saul went home. His uncle asked where he had been. Saul told him about looking for the donkeys and going to Samuel. "What did Samuel tell you?" "He told us plainly that the donkeys had been found." That was all. Saul didn't mention the anointing. He didn't mention the oil, the signs, the prophecy about becoming king. Was this humility, prudence, or something else? A reluctance to embrace the calling God had placed on his life? Samuel called all Israel to assemble at Mizpah. The time had come to publicly reveal the king that God had chosen. But first, Samuel reminded them of what they were doing. "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, I brought up Israel out of Egypt, and I delivered you from the hand of the Egyptians and from the hand of all the kingdoms that were oppressing you. But today you have rejected your God, who saves you from all your calamities and your distresses, and you have said to him, 'Set a king over us.'" Even now, at the moment of coronation, Samuel wanted them to understand this was their choice, not God's best. God would work through it, but they needed to know the cost of what they had demanded. Then the selection began. Tribe by tribe, clan by clan, family by family, the lots were cast. The tribe of Benjamin was taken, the clan of Matri was taken. Saul, the son of Kish, was taken. The king was chosen. The moment of revelation had arrived, but when they looked for him, he wasn't there. They sought him, but he could not be found. Where was the king? So they inquired again of the Lord, "Is there a man still to come?" And the Lord said, "Behold, he has hidden himself among the baggage." The man chosen to lead Israel was hiding behind the luggage. Was he terrified of the responsibility, overwhelmed by the impossibility of the task, genuinely humble, believing himself unworthy? Or was this the first sign of a character flaw that would later prove fatal, a tendency to shrink back when courage was required? Then they ran and took him from there. They found him. They brought him out. And when he stood before the people, there was none among the people like him from his shoulders upward. Taller than everyone, more impressive than everyone, everything Israel had wanted. And Samuel said to all the people, "Do you see him whom the Lord has chosen? There is none like him among all the people." And all the people shouted, "Long live the king! Long live the king!" The shout echoed across the assembly. Israel had its king at last. But not everyone was convinced. Some worthless fellows said, "How can this man save us?" And they despised him and brought him no present, but he held his peace. Saul's response to contempt was silence. He didn't defend himself. He didn't punish his critics. He simply waited. Perhaps he was wise, knowing that actions would prove more than words. Or perhaps he was still uncertain, still hiding inside, even as he stood head and shoulders above the crowd. Time would tell. The test came quickly. Nahash the Ammonite besieged Jabesh Gilead, a city across the Jordan. The people of Jabesh, desperate, offered to surrender and become servants. But Nahash had a sadistic counteroffer. "On this condition I will make a treaty with you, that I gouge out all your right eyes, and thus bring disgrace on all Israel." Imagine the horror. Not just slavery, mutilation. Every man in the city would lose his right eye, a permanent mark of shame that would tell the world, "We could not defend ourselves. We are broken." The elders of Jabesh asked for 7 days to seek help from the rest of Israel. Nahash agreed, confident that no one would come. Messengers arrived at Gibeah with the news. The people wept, and then Saul heard. Now behold, Saul was coming from the field behind the oxen. He was plowing. Even after being crowned king, he was still farming, still living as he had before. The monarchy had not yet taken full shape. "What is wrong with the people that they are weeping?" they told him. And the Spirit of God rushed upon Saul when he heard these words, and his anger was greatly kindled. This is the Saul Israel needed. Not the man hiding in the baggage, but a king filled with God's Spirit, burning with righteous fury at injustice. He took his yoke of oxen, cut them in pieces, and sent the pieces throughout all the territory of Israel with this message: "Whoever does not come out after Saul and Samuel, so shall it be done to his oxen." It was a shocking summons, and it worked. Then the dread of the Lord fell upon the people, and they came out as one man. 330,000 men assembled. An army that had not existed a week before materialized out of the tribes of Israel. Saul divided them into 3 companies. They attacked the Ammonite camp at the morning watch, that pre-dawn hour when guards are sleepiest and morale is lowest. And they struck down the Ammonites until the heat of the day, and those who survived were scattered, so that no 2 of them were left together. Total victory. Complete annihilation. Jabesh Gilead was saved. The people were ecstatic. They remembered those who had mocked Saul at his coronation. "Who is it that said, 'Shall Saul reign over us? Bring the men, that we may put them to death.' But Saul stopped them. 'Not a man shall be put to death this day, for today the Lord has worked salvation in Israel.'" This was Saul at his best, victorious but merciful, strong but humble enough to give God the credit. Samuel saw the moment and seized it. "Come, let us go to Gilgal and there renew the kingdom." At Gilgal, they made Saul king again, this time with the whole nation unified behind him. They offered sacrifices. They rejoiced. Samuel delivered his farewell address. He recounted the history of Israel. He warned them again about the dangers of having a king. He called down thunder and rain in the middle of wheat harvest, a miraculous sign to show that their request for a king had displeased God. The people trembled. "Pray for your servants to the Lord your God, that we may not die, for we have added to all our sins this evil, to ask for ourselves a king." And Samuel reassured them, "Do not be afraid. You have done all this evil, yet do not turn aside from following the Lord, but serve the Lord with all your heart. For the Lord will not forsake his people for his great name's sake, because it has pleased the Lord to make you a people for himself." God would not abandon them. Even though they had rejected him as king, he would remain faithful. His love was not based on their worthiness, but on his character. "Moreover, as for me, far be it from me that I should sin against the Lord by ceasing to pray for you, and I will instruct you in the good and the right way. Only fear the Lord and serve him faithfully with all your heart. For consider what great things he has done for you. But if you still do wickedly, you and your king shall be swept away." The warning hung in the air. Everything depended on faithfulness, Saul's faithfulness, Israel's faithfulness. The story of Israel's first king had begun in triumph, but the seeds of tragedy were already planted, waiting for the moment when they would bloom into catastrophe. Saul had reigned 2 years when the Philistines gathered again for war. And this time it was serious. The Philistines mustered to fight with Israel, 30,000 chariots and 6,000 horsemen, and troops like the sand on the seashore in multitude. 30,000 chariots. This was not a border raid. This was an invasion force designed to crush Israel once and for all. The Israelites saw what was coming and panicked. When the men of Israel saw that they were in trouble, the people hid themselves in caves and in holes and in rocks and in tombs and in cisterns. Some fled across the Jordan entirely. Those who stayed with Saul were trembling. Samuel had given Saul instructions, "Wait for me at Gilgal for 7 days. I will come and offer sacrifices. I will tell you what to do." Saul waited. Day after day he watched his army melt away as men deserted. Day after day he scanned the horizon for Samuel. The 7th day came. Samuel had not arrived. The army was disintegrating. The Philistines were massing. Something had to be done. So Saul said, "Bring the burnt offering here to me and the peace offerings." And he offered the burnt offering. The king had no authority to offer sacrifices. That was the priest's role, Samuel's role. Saul had been told to wait, but fear and impatience overruled obedience. As soon as he had finished offering the burnt offering, behold, Samuel came. The timing is almost painful. If only Saul had waited a few more minutes, if only he had trusted just a little longer. Samuel saw what had happened. His greeting was not friendly. "What have you done?" Saul made excuses. "When I saw that the people were scattering from me, and that you did not come within the days appointed, and that the Philistines had mustered at Michmash, I said, 'Now the Philistines will come down against me at Gilgal, and I have not sought the favor of the Lord.' So I forced myself and offered the burnt offering." I forced myself, as if he had no choice, as if circumstances had compelled him. But Samuel saw through it. "You have done foolishly. You have not kept the command of the Lord your God, with which he commanded you. For then the Lord would have established your kingdom over Israel forever. But now your kingdom shall not continue. The Lord has sought out a man after his own heart, and the Lord has commanded him to be prince over his people, because you have not kept what the Lord commanded you." A man after God's own heart. Already God was looking beyond Saul to his replacement. The dynasty that might have lasted forever was already doomed, just 2 years into Saul's reign. Saul had wanted to secure victory through religious ritual. Instead, he had forfeited his dynasty through religious disobedience. Remember this moment. It will echo through everything that follows. Despite Saul's failure, the battle with the Philistines continued, and in the midst of the chaos, a hero emerged. Not Saul, but his son, Jonathan. With only his armor-bearer at his side, Jonathan decided to attack a Philistine outpost on a steep cliff. His reasoning was breathtaking. "Come, let us go over to the garrison of these uncircumcised. It may be that the Lord will work for us, for nothing can hinder the Lord from saving by many or by few. It may be." Jonathan wasn't certain of success, but he knew that God's power wasn't limited by human numbers. If God wanted to give victory, he could do it through 2 men as easily as through 2,000. They climbed the cliff. They attacked. The first strike killed about 20 men. And then God moved, and there was a panic in the camp, in the field, and among all the people. The garrison and even the raiders trembled. The earth quaked, and it became a very great panic. The earth itself shook. The Philistines turned on each other in their confusion. Saul's watchmen saw the chaos from a distance and realized something extraordinary was happening. Saul mobilized his army and joined the rout. Israelites who had been hiding emerged and joined the pursuit. Men who had defected to the Philistines switched sides. So the Lord saved Israel that day. Victory, but not because of Saul's strategy or Saul's sacrifice, because of Jonathan's faith and God's power. In the heat of pursuit, Saul made a rash vow. "Cursed be the man who eats food until it is evening, and I am avenged on my enemies." He wanted his men fighting, not stopping to eat. It seemed like zeal. It was actually foolishness. The soldiers grew faint. They needed sustenance. But fear of the king's curse kept them hungry. Jonathan hadn't heard the oath. When the army passed through a forest where honey was dripping from the trees, he reached out with his staff, dipped it in the honeycomb, and ate. His eyes brightened. His strength returned. Someone told him about his father's curse. Then Jonathan said, "My father has troubled the land. See how my eyes have become bright because I tasted a little of this honey. How much better if the people had eaten freely today of the spoil of their enemies that they found. For now the defeat among the Philistines has not been great." Jonathan saw clearly what Saul could not. The oath was counterproductive. Weak soldiers couldn't fight effectively. The victory could have been greater if the men had been allowed to eat. By evening, the starving soldiers were so desperate that when they finally captured livestock, they slaughtered the animals and ate the meat with the blood still in it, a direct violation of God's law. Saul tried to control the chaos. He built an altar. He consulted God about whether to continue pursuing the Philistines. But God did not answer. Saul assumed someone had sinned. He swore another oath. "Though it be in Jonathan my son, he shall surely die." He cast lots to find the guilty party. The lot fell on Jonathan. "Tell me what you have done." "I tasted a little honey with the tip of the staff that was in my hand. Here I am. I will die." Jonathan didn't make excuses. He didn't blame his father for the foolish oath. He simply accepted the consequences. But Saul was actually going to kill his own son, the hero of the day, the man whose faith had triggered the entire victory, for eating a little honey. The people intervened. "Shall Jonathan die who has worked this great salvation in Israel? Far from it. As the Lord lives, there shall not one hair of his head fall to the ground, for he has worked with God this day." They ransomed Jonathan. The hero lived. But the episode revealed something deeply wrong with Saul. His oaths were rash. His priorities were skewed. His judgment was failing. The man who had seemed so promising was beginning to unravel. Samuel came to Saul with a message from God. "Thus says the Lord of hosts, I have noted what Amalek did to Israel in opposing them on the way when they came up out of Egypt. Now go and strike Amalek and devote to destruction all that they have. Do not spare them, but kill both man and woman, child and infant, ox and sheep, camel and donkey." This command troubles modern readers. It troubled ancient readers too. But in the context of the ancient Near East, it was a form of divine judgment. The Amalekites had attacked Israel unprovoked when they were weakest, targeting the stragglers and the feeble. For this, God had decreed their destruction. Saul's job was simple: obey completely. No exceptions, no modifications, total destruction. He gathered the army, 200,000 foot soldiers and 10,000 men of Judah. He warned the Kenites, who lived among the Amalekites, to leave so they wouldn't be caught in the destruction. Then he attacked. And Saul defeated the Amalekites from Havilah as far as Shur, which is east of Egypt. And he took Agag, the king of the Amalekites, alive, and devoted to destruction all the people with the edge of the sword. He captured the king alive. Already he was modifying God's command. But Saul and the people spared Agag and the best of the sheep and of the oxen and of the fattened calves and the lambs and all that was good, and would not utterly destroy them. All that was despised and worthless they devoted to destruction. Partial obedience. They destroyed what was worthless but kept what was valuable. To Saul, this probably seemed reasonable. Why waste good livestock? Why not take Agag as a trophy, a living symbol of victory? But partial obedience is still disobedience, and God saw everything. The word of the Lord came to Samuel. "I regret that I have made Saul king, for he has turned back from following me and has not performed my commandments." Regret. The word is startling. Can God regret? Can the Almighty, who knows the end from the beginning, be surprised? The Hebrew suggests something like grief. God was not caught off guard by Saul's failure, but he grieved over it nonetheless. The potential that had existed in this tall, spirit-filled king would never be realized. The dynasty that could have lasted forever was already over. Samuel was angry. He cried out to the Lord all night. This was his nation, his king, his life's work unraveling. At dawn, he went to find Saul. Samuel arrived to find Saul celebrating his victory. "Blessed be you to the Lord. I have performed the commandment of the Lord." Saul actually believed he had obeyed. He had convinced himself that partial compliance was full obedience. But Samuel heard something Saul didn't expect. "What then is this bleating of the sheep in my ears and the lowing of the oxen that I hear?" The evidence of disobedience was audible. The sheep Saul claimed to have destroyed were bleating their existence. Saul had his explanation ready. "They have brought them from the Amalekites, for the people spared the best of the sheep and of the oxen to sacrifice to the Lord your God, and the rest we have devoted to destruction." Notice the pronouns. They spared the animals. The people did it. Saul was already shifting blame. And the excuse, "We kept them to sacrifice to God." It was religious. It was pious. Samuel cut through the self-deception. "Stop. I will tell you what the Lord said to me this night." And then he exposed the tragedy of Saul's character. "Though you are little in your own eyes, are you not the head of the tribes of Israel? The Lord anointed you king over Israel, and the Lord sent you on a mission and said, 'Go, devote to destruction the sinners, the Amalekites, and fight against them until they are consumed.' Why then did you not obey the voice of the Lord? Why did you pounce on the spoil and do what was evil in the sight of the Lord? Little in your own eyes." Samuel remembered when Saul was humble, when he hid among the baggage, when he protested that he was from the smallest tribe. That humility should have made him more obedient, not less. But somewhere along the way, Saul had started trusting his own judgment over God's commands. Saul protested again. "I have obeyed the voice of the Lord. I have gone on the mission on which the Lord sent me. I have brought Agag, the king of Amalek, and I have devoted the Amalekites to destruction. But the people took of the spoil, sheep and oxen, the best of the things devoted to destruction, to sacrifice to the Lord your God in Gilgal," still blaming the people, still insisting the livestock was for sacrifice, still unable to see his own failure. Samuel's response became one of the most quoted passages in all of Scripture. "Has the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to listen than the fat of rams. For rebellion is as the sin of divination, and presumption is as iniquity and idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has also rejected you from being king. To obey is better than sacrifice." God doesn't want our religious activities if they're substitutes for actual obedience. He doesn't want our worship if we're simultaneously ignoring his commands. He doesn't want sacrifices from livestock we were supposed to destroy. Religion can become a cover for rebellion. Piety can mask presumption. And Saul had done exactly that, convinced himself that keeping the animals for sacrifice was actually honoring God, when in reality it was defying God. The sentence was final: rejected from being king. Only now, finally, did Saul crack. "I have sinned, for I have transgressed the commandment of the Lord and your words, because I feared the people and obeyed their voice." I feared the people. The truth slipped out. Saul had caved to popular pressure. He had let the army's greed override God's command. "Now, therefore, please pardon my sin, and return with me that I may bow before the Lord." But Samuel refused. "I will not return with you, for you have rejected the word of the Lord, and the Lord has rejected you from being king over Israel." Samuel turned to leave. Saul grabbed his robe. The fabric tore. Samuel saw a metaphor. "The Lord has torn the kingdom of Israel from you this day, and has given it to a neighbor of yours, who is better than you. And also the glory of Israel will not lie or have regret, for he is not a man that he should have regret." Saul begged again, but his concern was revealing. "I have sinned, yet honor me now before the elders of my people and before Israel, and return with me, that I may bow before the Lord your God. Honor me." Before the elders, before the people, even in his confession, Saul was worried about appearances. His reputation mattered more than his repentance. Samuel relented enough to return with him. Saul worshipped. But nothing had really changed. Then Samuel demanded, "Bring here to me Agag, the king of the Amalekites." Agag came, thinking perhaps he had been spared for good. Surely the bitterness of death is past. He was wrong. "As your sword has made women childless, so shall your mother be childless among women." And Samuel hacked Agag to pieces before the Lord at Gilgal. The old prophet did what the king had refused to do. He completed the mission Saul had compromised. And Samuel did not see Saul again until the day of his death, but Samuel grieved over Saul. Grieved, not celebrated, not congratulated himself for being right. Samuel mourned for the king who could have been, for the potential that would never be realized, for the man God had anointed and who had thrown it all away. And the Lord regretted that he had made Saul king over Israel. Two broken hearts, Samuel's and God's, grieving over a broken king, but already God was moving forward. There was a man after his own heart, waiting in the wings. It was time to find him. The Lord said to Samuel, "How long will you grieve over Saul, since I have rejected him from being king over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and go. I will send you to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have provided for myself a king among his sons." How long will you grieve? God didn't dismiss Samuel's sorrow, but he wouldn't let him drown in it. There was work to do, a new king to anoint, a new story to begin. But Samuel was afraid. "How can I go? If Saul hears it, he will kill me." Even the prophet of God feared Saul's paranoia. The king, who had been too timid to act against the Amalekites, would not hesitate to kill anyone who threatened his throne. God gave Samuel cover. "Take a heifer with you and say, 'I have come to sacrifice to the Lord,' and invite Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will show you what you shall do, and you shall anoint for me him whom I declare to you." Samuel went to Bethlehem. The elders of the city trembled at his arrival. "Do you come peaceably?" A prophet showing up unexpectedly was often bad news, but Samuel reassured them, "Peaceably, I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Consecrate yourselves and come with me to the sacrifice." He consecrated Jesse and his sons and invited them to the feast. When they arrived, Samuel saw Jesse's firstborn, Eliab. He looked on Eliab and thought, "Surely the Lord's anointed is before him." Eliab must have been impressive, tall perhaps, or strong, or handsome. Samuel saw a king. God saw something else. "Do not look on his appearance or on the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart." This is one of the most important sentences in the Bible. The world evaluates by externals, height, beauty, wealth, credentials. God evaluates by the heart. Samuel had made this mistake before. He had been impressed by Saul's appearance too. Now he was learning, don't trust your eyes. Trust God's voice. Jesse brought forward his second son, Abinadab. "Neither has the Lord chosen this one." Then Shammah. "Neither has the Lord chosen this one." One by one, 7 sons passed before Samuel. 7 times God said no. Samuel was confused. "Are all your sons here?" And Jesse's answer revealed everything about this youngest son standing in the family. There remains yet the youngest, but behold, he is keeping the sheep. He's out with the sheep. Not important enough to call in for a prophetic feast. Not significant enough to present to the famous seer. Just a boy, doing the low-status job of watching the flock. "Send and get him, for we will not sit down until he comes here." They sent for him, and when he entered, now he was ruddy and had beautiful eyes and was handsome. The narrator does note his appearance, but after we've just been told that God doesn't judge by appearances, the point is clear: David's looks are incidental. What matters is what's inside. And the Lord said, "Arise, anoint him, for this is he." This is he, the one God had chosen, the one whose heart aligned with heaven, the one who would become the greatest king Israel ever had, the ancestor of the Messiah, the man whose psalms would be sung for 3,000 years. Then Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brothers. In the midst of his brothers. The sons who had been passed over watched as the youngest, the shepherd, the afterthought, was chosen above them all. And the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon David from that day forward. From that day forward. Not temporarily, as with Saul. Not for a specific task. The Spirit came upon David and stayed. Samuel returned to Ramah. His work was done. The torch had been passed. And David, he went back to his sheep. The anointed king returned to his flock, waiting for the day when God would elevate him to the throne. He had no idea what was coming. Now the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, and a harmful spirit from the Lord tormented him. This is one of the most troubling verses in the Bible. A harmful spirit from the Lord? How do we understand this? In the ancient worldview, all spirits ultimately came under God's sovereignty. What tormented Saul, whether we understand it as depression, paranoia, madness, or something supernatural, came with God's permission. The spirit that had once empowered Saul for kingship had departed, and in its place came darkness. Saul's servants noticed the change. Their king was suffering. They had a suggestion. "Let our Lord now command your servants who are before you to seek out a man who is skillful in playing the lyre, and when the harmful spirit from God is upon you, he will play it, and you will be well." Music as therapy. It was worth trying. "Provide for me a man who can play well, and bring him to me." One of the servants knew just the right person. "Behold, I have seen a son of Jesse the Bethlehemite, who is skillful in playing, a man of valor, a man of war, prudent in speech, and a man of good presence, and the Lord is with him." Every quality Saul lacked, this young man possessed, and the servant's final words were the most important: "The Lord is with him." The Lord had departed from Saul. The Lord was with David. The contrast could not be sharper. Saul sent messengers to Jesse. "Send me David your son who is with the sheep." Jesse loaded a donkey with bread, wine, and a young goat, gifts for the king, and sent David to court. And David came to Saul and entered his service, and Saul loved him greatly, and he became his armor-bearer. Saul loved him. How tragically ironic. The man who would spend years trying to murder David began by loving him. Saul sent word to Jesse, "Let David remain in my service, for he has found favor in my sight." The shepherd boy had become a courtier, a musician, an armor-bearer to the king. He didn't know that he had been anointed to replace this very king. He was simply serving faithfully, playing his harp, soothing the tortured soul of a man abandoned by God. And whenever the harmful spirit from God was upon Saul, David took the lyre and played it with his hand. So Saul was refreshed and was well, and the harmful spirit departed from him. David's music drove away the darkness. For a time there was peace between the tormented king and the shepherd musician. But that peace would not last. It could not last. because David was rising and Saul was falling, and the collision between them would shake Israel to its foundations, and it would begin with a monster. The Philistines gathered their armies again. This time they had a champion. And there came out from the camp of the Philistines a champion named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. 6 cubits and a span, over 9 feet tall, a giant. He had a helmet of bronze on his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of bronze. 5,000 shekels, about 125 pounds of bronze armor, just the armor. And he had bronze armor on his legs and a javelin of bronze slung between his shoulders. The shaft of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his spear's head weighed 600 shekels of iron. The spear shaft was compared to a weaver's beam. Think of the wooden bars used in ancient looms, several inches thick. The iron head alone weighed about 15 pounds. This was not a man, this was a weapon of war wrapped in human form. And his shield-bearer went before him. Even his shield was too heavy for him to carry himself. Goliath stood between the armies and issued his challenge. "Why have you come out to draw up for battle? Am I not a Philistine, and are you not servants of Saul? Choose a man for yourselves, and let him come down to me. If he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall be our servants and serve us." Single combat, winner takes all, a way to decide the war without massive bloodshed. "I defy the ranks of Israel this day. Give me a man, that we may fight together." And then the narrator tells us something devastating. When Saul and all Israel heard these words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. Saul, the man chosen because he was head and shoulders taller than anyone in Israel, was terrified. The king, who should have been the champion, was cowering with his army. For 40 days the Philistine came forward and took his stand, morning and evening. Every sunrise, every sunset, Goliath appeared and shouted his challenge, and every day, twice a day, the army of Israel retreated in terror. 40 days of humiliation, 40 days of a pagan warrior mocking the armies of the living God. Meanwhile, David was back home with the sheep. He went back and forth between Bethlehem and Saul's camp, but at this particular time he was tending his father's flock. Jesse sent him to the battle lines with food for his brothers and their commander. When David arrived, he left the supplies with the baggage keeper and ran to the front lines to find his brothers. And behold, the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, came up out of the ranks of the Philistines and spoke the same words as before. And David heard him. David heard. And David saw something his brothers and the entire army had missed. The soldiers around David were terrified. "Have you seen this man who has come up? Surely he has come up to defy Israel." They told David about the reward Saul had promised: great wealth, the king's daughter in marriage, and tax exemption for the champion's father's house. The prizes were enormous because no one was willing to claim them. But David's question cut through all the fear and calculation. What shall be done for the man who kills this Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? Did you catch that? Everyone else saw a giant. David saw an uncircumcised pagan defying God's people. Everyone else measured Goliath against their own strength and found themselves lacking. David measured Goliath against the armies of the living God and saw that the Philistine was the one who was hopelessly outmatched. His oldest brother, Eliab, heard him talking and was furious. "Why have you come down? And with whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your presumption and the evil of your heart, for you have come down to see the battle." The same brother who had been passed over for anointing now attacked David's motives: jealousy, embarrassment, perhaps both. David's response was beautiful in its simplicity. "What have I done now? Was it not but a word?" He didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. He simply turned to someone else and asked the same question, and the answers he received kept confirming what he already believed. Goliath was blaspheming God, and no one was doing anything about it. Word reached the king that someone was actually talking about fighting the giant, and Saul sent for him. David stood before Saul, the shepherd boy before the warrior king, and spoke with absolute confidence. "Let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight with this Philistine." Your servant will go. Not someone should, or perhaps we could. I will go. Saul was incredulous. "You are not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for you are but a youth, and he has been a man of war from his youth." The math didn't work. A teenager against a professional soldier who had been killing since before David was born. But David had done his own math. "Your servant used to keep sheep for his father, and when there came a lion or a bear and took a lamb from the flock, I went after him and struck him and delivered it out of his mouth. And if he arose against me, I caught him by his beard and struck him and killed him. A lion, a bear, alone with no army, no bronze armor, no iron spear, just a shepherd's weapons and the strength God gave him. David had killed them both. Your servant has struck down both lions and bears, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be like one of them, for he has defied the armies of the living God." And then the statement of faith that echoes through the centuries. "The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine." Saul had no answer for that. What could he say? The boy's logic was flawless if his faith was real. "Go, and the Lord be with you." Saul tried to help in his own way. Then Saul clothed David with his armor. He put a helmet of bronze on his head and clothed him with a coat of mail, the king's armor on the shepherd. It should have been an upgrade. And David strapped his sword over his armor, and he tried in vain to go, for he had not tested them. The armor was too big, too heavy, too unfamiliar. David couldn't even walk in it. "I cannot go with these, for I have not tested them." So he took it all off. This is a profound moment. Saul's weapons were useless to David. The conventional approach, meet the giant on his own terms with bronze and iron, wouldn't work. David needed to fight as himself, with the tools he knew, trusting the God who had proven faithful in the wilderness. Then he took his staff in his hand and chose 5 smooth stones from the brook and put them in his shepherd's pouch. His sling was in his hand, and he approached the Philistine. 5 smooth stones, a wooden staff, a leather sling. Against a 9-foot giant in 125 pounds of armor, with a spear like a weaver's beam. Goliath saw David coming and was insulted. "Am I a dog that you come to me with sticks?" He cursed David by his gods. "Come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and to the beasts of the field." David's response was not a boast about his own skill. It was a declaration of war in the name of God. "You come to me with a sword and with a spear and with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied." The God of the armies of Israel. The one Goliath had been mocking for 40 days. "This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you down and cut off your head." This day. Not perhaps, not I hope. This day it ends. "And I will give the dead bodies of the host of the Philistines this day to the birds of the air, and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. The purpose wasn't personal glory. The purpose was that all the earth might know. And all this assembly shall know that the Lord saves not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hand. The battle is the Lord's. 8 words that summarize everything David understood that Saul had forgotten. Goliath advanced. David ran toward him. Let that sink in. The giant lumbered forward, and the shepherd boy sprinted to meet him. And David put his hand in his bag, and took out a stone, and slung it, and struck the Philistine on his forehead. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell on his face to the ground. 1 stone, 1 shot. The giant went down, but David wasn't finished. Then David ran and stood over the Philistine, and took his sword, and drew it out of its sheath, and killed him, and cut off his head with it. He had promised to cut off Goliath's head. He kept his word, using the giant's own sword to do it. When the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, they fled. The army that had terrified Israel for 40 days broke and ran. The men of Israel pursued them, shouting, striking them down all the way to Gath and Ekron. A shepherd boy with a stone had turned the tide of a war. But here's the tragedy. The same faith that made David a hero would make him a threat. The same God who gave him victory would make him a target. David had just killed a giant. Now he would spend the next decade running from a king. When the battle was over and David returned from killing Goliath, Saul asked his commander Abner, "Whose son is this youth?" Abner didn't know, so Saul spoke directly to David. "Whose son are you, young man?" "I am the son of your servant Jesse the Bethlehemite." This is strange. David had been Saul's armor-bearer. David had played the harp to soothe Saul's troubled spirit. How could Saul not know who he was? Some scholars suggest that Saul's mental deterioration had affected his memory. Others propose that the stories are out of chronological order. Whatever the explanation, the question marked a turning point. Saul was about to discover just how dangerous this shepherd boy was, not as an enemy, but as a rival. Jonathan, Saul's son, witnessed everything. He had seen David's courage, heard his faith, watched him defeat the giant. As soon as he had finished speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. This was not casual friendship. This was the deepest possible human bond. Jonathan, the prince who had once attacked a Philistine garrison with just his armor-bearer, recognized in David a kindred spirit, someone else who trusted God completely. Then Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as his own soul, and Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that was on him and gave it to David and his armor and even his sword and his bow and his belt. Do you understand what Jonathan just did? He was the crown prince, the heir apparent, and he gave David the symbols of his royal status. Jonathan knew. Perhaps God had revealed it to him. Perhaps he simply saw it in David's anointing. But he knew that David, not he, would be the next king. And instead of fighting it, he embraced it. This friendship would be tested by Saul's jealousy, by court intrigue, by years of separation and danger. But it would never break. Saul kept David at court permanently. He wouldn't let him go back to his father's house. David served in whatever capacity Saul assigned him, and he succeeded at everything. David went out and was successful wherever Saul sent him, so that Saul set him over the men of war. Promoted, recognized, given command of soldiers. The people loved him. The servants of Saul approved of him. Everything David touched prospered. And then came the moment that poisoned Saul's heart forever. The army returned from defeating the Philistines. The women came out of all the cities of Israel, singing and dancing, celebrating the victory with tambourines and songs of joy. And the women sang to one another as they celebrated, "Saul has struck down his thousands, and David his 10,000s." It was a song, a celebration. The women probably meant nothing political by it. They were just expressing enthusiasm, using poetic parallelism, the way Hebrew poetry worked. But Saul heard it differently. Saul was very angry, and this saying displeased him. He said, "They have ascribed to David 10,000s, and to me they have ascribed thousands, and what more can he have but the kingdom?" The kingdom. Saul jumped straight to the worst interpretation. If the people loved David more, surely David would take the throne. And Saul eyed David from that day on. Eyed him, watched him, suspected him. From that moment, the king who had loved David became the king who feared him. The very next day, the harmful spirit rushed upon Saul. He was raving inside his house. David was playing the harp as usual, trying to soothe the king's tormented mind. Saul had a spear in his hand. And Saul hurled the spear, for he thought, "I will pin David to the wall." But David evaded him twice. Twice. The king tried to murder the musician who was trying to help him, and David, with reflexes born from years of protecting sheep from predators, dodged death twice. Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with him, but had departed from Saul. There it is again. The Lord was with David. The Lord had departed from Saul. The presence of God made all the difference. Saul couldn't kill David directly, so he tried strategy. He removed David from his presence, made him a commander of 1,000 men, sent him out to fight. But David succeeded in all his undertakings, for the Lord was with him. Every attempt to get David killed in battle backfired. David just became more famous, more successful, more beloved. When Saul saw that he had great success, he stood in fearful awe of him. Saul had promised his daughter to whoever killed Goliath, but when it came time to fulfill that promise, he tried to use it as another trap. First, he offered his older daughter, Merab, but then he gave her to someone else instead, humiliating David. Then he heard that his younger daughter, Michal, loved David. Saul was pleased. "Let me give her to him, that she may be a snare for him, and that the hand of the Philistines may be against him." He wasn't giving away his daughter in goodwill. He was setting a trap. Saul had his servants tell David that the king wanted him as a son-in-law. David's response was humble. "Does it seem to you a little thing to become the king's son-in-law, since I am a poor man and have no reputation?" He couldn't afford the bride price for a princess. Saul had anticipated this. The king desires no bride price except 100 foreskins of the Philistines, that he may be avenged on the king's enemies. It was a death warrant disguised as a wedding invitation. Go kill 100 Philistines. Surely you'll die trying. David arose and went, along with his men, and killed 200 of the Philistines. Not 100. 200. David doubled the requirement. Saul had no choice. He gave Michal to David in marriage. But when Saul saw and knew that the Lord was with David, and that Michal, Saul's daughter, loved him, Saul was even more afraid of David. So Saul was David's enemy continually. The Lord was with David. Michal loved David. The commanders of the Philistines went out to battle, and David had more success than all the servants of Saul. Everything Saul tried to destroy David made David stronger. The king was fighting against God and losing. Saul stopped being subtle. He told Jonathan and all his servants to kill David. But Jonathan loved David. He warned his friend, "Saul, my father, seeks to kill you. Therefore be on your guard in the morning. Stay in a secret place and hide yourself." Jonathan went to his father and spoke on David's behalf. "Let not the king sin against his servant David, because he has not sinned against you, and because his deeds have brought good to you. For he took his life in his hand, and he struck down the Philistine, and the Lord worked a great salvation for all Israel. You saw it and rejoiced. Why then will you sin against innocent blood by killing David without cause?" For a moment Saul listened. "As the Lord lives, he shall not be put to death." Jonathan brought David back to court. For a time things seemed normal. David played his harp. He went out to fight. He returned in triumph, and then the evil spirit came again. And the harmful spirit from the Lord was upon Saul, as he sat in his house with his spear in his hand, and David was playing the lyre. And Saul sought to pin David to the wall with the spear, but he eluded Saul, so that he struck the spear into the wall, and David fled and escaped that night. This time David didn't come back. Saul sent messengers to David's house to watch it, planning to kill him in the morning. Michal, David's wife, saw them. "If you do not escape with your life tonight, tomorrow you will be killed." She let David down through a window. He fled into the night. Then Michal created a decoy. She took a household idol, laid it in the bed, put a pillow of goat's hair at its head, and covered it with clothes. When Saul's messengers came, she told them David was sick. Saul wasn't satisfied. He sent them back with orders. "Bring him up to me in the bed, that I may kill him." They discovered the deception. When Saul confronted Michal, she lied to protect herself. "He said to me, 'Let me go. Why should I kill you?'" David was gone. He fled to Samuel at Ramah and told the prophet everything that had happened. Saul heard that David was at Ramah with Samuel. He sent messengers to capture him, but when the messengers arrived, they found a company of prophets prophesying, with Samuel standing as their head. And the Spirit of God came upon the messengers of Saul, and they also prophesied. They couldn't complete their mission. They were overwhelmed by God's Spirit. Saul sent more messengers. The same thing happened. He sent a third group. Same result. Finally, Saul went himself. But before he even reached Ramah, the Spirit of God came upon him also, and as he went, he prophesied until he came to Naioth in Ramah. And he too stripped off his clothes, and he too prophesied before Samuel, and lay naked all that day and all that night. The king of Israel, lying naked on the ground, prophesying uncontrollably while his intended victim escaped. Is Saul also among the prophets? The proverb was repeated, but this time with a darker meaning. When Saul was first overcome by the Spirit, it was a sign of his calling. Now it was a sign of his helplessness. God would not let him harm David. David fled from Naioth and found Jonathan. "What have I done? What is my guilt? And what is my sin before your father, that he seeks my life?" Jonathan still couldn't quite believe his father intended murder. "Far from it, you shall not die. Behold, my father does nothing either great or small without disclosing it to me. And why should my father hide this from me? It is not so." But David knew, "Your father knows well that I have found favor in your eyes." And he thinks, "Do not let Jonathan know this, lest he be grieved. But truly, as the Lord lives and as your soul lives, there is but a step between me and death. One step, one spear throw, one ambush." They made a plan. The next day was the new moon festival, a feast where David was expected to eat at the king's table. David would hide in a field. Jonathan would test his father's reaction to David's absence. Then Jonathan would signal David with arrows. If he shot them close, David was safe. If far away, David had to flee. But first, they renewed their covenant. "If I am still alive, show me the steadfast love of the Lord, that I may not die, and do not cut off your steadfast love from my house forever." Jonathan knew. He knew David would be king. He knew his own father was doomed. And he asked only that David remember him, remember his family when he came to power. And Jonathan made David swear again by his love for him, for he loved him as he loved his own soul. The new moon came. David hid. His seat at the table was empty. The first day, Saul said nothing. He assumed David was ceremonially unclean, unable to attend the feast. The second day, Saul asked Jonathan, "Why has not the son of Jesse come to the meal, either yesterday or today?" Jonathan gave the excuse they had planned. David had asked permission to attend a family sacrifice in Bethlehem. Saul exploded. "You son of a perverse, rebellious woman! Do I not know that you have chosen the son of Jesse to your own shame and to the shame of your mother's nakedness? For as long as the son of Jesse lives on the earth, neither you nor your kingdom shall be established. Therefore send and bring him to me, for he shall surely die." The mask was off. Saul wasn't just angry at David. He was telling Jonathan that his own inheritance was threatened. As long as David lived, Jonathan would never be king. Jonathan pleaded, "Why should he be put to death? What has he done?" But Saul hurled his spear at him to strike him, at his own son. The king who had tried to kill David with a spear now turned that spear on his own heir. So Jonathan knew that his father was determined to put David to death. He left the table in fierce anger, humiliated and grieving. He ate nothing that day. In the morning, Jonathan went to the field with a small boy to retrieve arrows. He shot an arrow beyond the boy. "Is not the arrow beyond you?" The signal. David had to flee. "Hurry! Be quick! Do not stay!" Jonathan sent the boy away with his weapons. As soon as they were alone, David emerged from his hiding place. And they kissed one another and wept with one another, David weeping the most. The most. David knew what he was losing, not just his position at court, but this friend, this soul brother, who had loved him despite everything. Jonathan's final words were both blessing and prophecy. "Go in peace, because we have sworn both of us in the name of the Lord, saying, 'The Lord shall be between me and you, and between my offspring and your offspring forever.'" Then David rose and departed. And Jonathan went back into the city, back to his mad father, back to the court that would eventually consume him, back to a destiny he could not escape. They would see each other only once more. David fled to Nob, where the tabernacle had been relocated after Shiloh's destruction. The priest there was Ahimelech. Ahimelech was afraid when he saw David. "Why are you alone and no one with you?" David lied. He claimed to be on a secret mission for the king, with men waiting nearby. He asked for food, any food. The only bread available was the holy bread, the showbread that had been removed from before the Lord, replaced with fresh loaves. By law, only priests were allowed to eat it. Ahimelech gave it to David anyway, asking only whether his men had kept themselves pure. David also asked for a weapon. The only one available was the sword of Goliath, wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. "There is none like it. Give it to me." David took Goliath's sword and fled. But someone had witnessed this exchange. Doeg the Edomite, Saul's chief herdsman, was there that day, detained before the Lord. He would remember, and he would tell. David made a desperate decision. He went to Gath, Goliath's hometown, seeking refuge among the Philistines. It was insane. He was carrying Goliath's own sword. The servants of Achish, the king of Gath, recognized him immediately. "Is not this David, the king of the land? Did they not sing to one another of him in dances? Saul has struck down his thousands, and David his 10,000s?" David realized he was in terrible danger. So he changed his behavior before them and pretended to be insane in their hands, and made marks on the doors of the gate and let his spittle run down his beard. He drooled. He scratched at doors like a madman. He acted so deranged that Achish was disgusted. "Do I lack madmen, that you have brought this fellow to behave as a madman in my presence? Shall this fellow come into my house?" They let him go. The man who had killed their champion escaped by acting crazy. David fled to the cave of Adullam, and there his fortunes began to change. And everyone who was in distress, and everyone who was in debt, and everyone who was bitter in soul gathered to him, and he became commander over them. And there were with him about 400 men. The distressed, the indebted, the bitter, the rejected, and the desperate. David became their leader. This was not the polished army of a king. It was a band of outlaws, misfits, men with nothing left to lose. But these men would become David's mighty warriors. They would follow him through years of running, hiding, fighting. They would become the core of the army that would eventually conquer Israel's enemies. God was building something in the wilderness. The future king was being forged in hardship. Saul heard that David had been seen with armed men. He summoned his servants. "Hear now, people of Benjamin. Will the son of Jesse give every one of you fields and vineyards? Will he make you all commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds, that all of you have conspired against me?" The king was paranoid, accusing everyone of betrayal. Doeg the Edomite spoke up. "I saw the son of Jesse coming to Nob, to Ahimelech the son of Ahitub, and he inquired of the Lord for him, and gave him provisions, and gave him the sword of Goliath the Philistine." Saul summoned Ahimelech and all the priests of Nob. "Why have you conspired against me, you and the son of Jesse, in that you have given him bread and a sword, and have inquired of God for him, so that he has risen against me to lie in wait, as at this day?" Ahimelech defended himself, truthfully. "Who among all your servants is so faithful as David, who is the king's son-in-law, and captain over your bodyguard, and honored in your house? Is today the first time that I have inquired of God for him? No. Let not the king impute anything to his servant, or to all the house of my father, for your servant has known nothing of all this, much or little." He had done nothing wrong. He had helped David, believing David was still the king's loyal servant. But Saul had made up his mind. "You shall surely die, Ahimelech, you and all your father's house." He ordered his guards to kill the priests. They refused. Even Saul's soldiers knew this was wrong. But Doeg the Edomite turned and struck down the priests, and he killed on that day 85 persons who wore the linen ephod. 85 priests, murdered by an Edomite while Israelite soldiers stood and watched. And Doeg didn't stop there. And Nob, the city of the priests, he put to the sword, both man and woman, child and infant, ox, donkey and sheep, he put to the sword. The entire city, every living thing. Let that sink in. The complete destruction that Saul had been unwilling to execute against the Amalekites, the disobedience that cost him his kingdom, he now executed against his own people, against the servants of God. Saul had refused to destroy Israel's enemies completely, but he had no problem destroying Israel's priests completely. This is what happens when a man loses God. He becomes capable of anything. Only one son of Ahimelech escaped, Abiathar. He fled to David and told him what had happened. "I knew on that day when Doeg the Edomite was there that he would surely tell Saul, 'I have occasioned the death of all the persons of your father's house.'" David took responsibility. His lie to Ahimelech had led to this massacre. "Stay with me, do not be afraid, for he who seeks my life seeks your life. With me you shall be in safekeeping." Abiathar stayed. He became David's priest, the keeper of the ephod by which David inquired of the Lord. And he remembered. Decades later, his descendants would still be dealing with the consequences of this terrible day. Word came to David that the Philistines were attacking Keilah, a town in Judah, plundering the threshing floors. David inquired of the Lord, "Shall I go and attack these Philistines?" "Go and attack the Philistines and save Keilah." His men were afraid. "Behold, we are afraid here in Judah. How much more then if we go to Keilah against the armies of the Philistines?" David inquired again. Same answer. "Arise, go down to Keilah, for I will give the Philistines into your hand." David and his men, now grown to about 600, went to Keilah. They fought the Philistines, struck them with a great blow, saved the town, and took their livestock. But Saul heard that David was at Keilah, a fortified city with gates and bars. He thought, "God has given him into my hand, for he has shut himself in by entering a town that has gates and bars." He summoned all the people for war to besiege Keilah and capture David. David heard about Saul's plan. He took the ephod and inquired, "O Lord, the God of Israel, your servant has surely heard that Saul seeks to come to Keilah to destroy the city on my account. Will the men of Keilah surrender me into his hand? Will Saul come down, as your servant has heard? O Lord, the God of Israel, please tell your servant." "He will come down." "Will the men of Keilah surrender me and my men into the hand of Saul?" "They will surrender you." The town David had just saved would hand him over to the king who wanted him dead. David left immediately. He and his men escaped to the wilderness, moving from place to place. Saul sought him every day, but God did not give him into his hand. David was in the wilderness of Ziph, hiding in the forest, when Jonathan came to him. And Jonathan, Saul's son, rose and went to David at Horesh, and strengthened his hand in God. Strengthened his hand in God. In the midst of running, hiding, fearing for his life, David received encouragement from the most unexpected source, the son of his enemy. "Do not fear, for the hand of Saul my father shall not find you. You shall be king over Israel, and I shall be next to you. Saul my father also knows this." Jonathan knew. Saul knew. Everyone knew, except perhaps David himself, worn down by years of flight. And the two of them made a covenant before the Lord. This was their last meeting. They didn't know it then, but they would never see each other again in this life. They renewed their promises, their brotherhood, their hope for a future where David would reign and Jonathan would stand beside him, a future that would never come. David remained at Horesh, and Jonathan went home. He went home, back to his father, back to the court of a king descending into madness, back to a fate that would catch up with him on Mount Gilboa. If Jonathan had stayed with David, he might have lived. But he went back to his father, not because he was foolish, but because he was faithful. He stayed with Saul not out of blindness, but out of duty. He honored his father even when his father had become dishonorable, and it would cost him everything. The Ziphites went to Saul at Gibeah. "Is not David hiding among us?" They offered to betray David. Saul was grateful. "May you be blessed by the Lord, for you have had compassion on me. Go, make yet more sure. Know and see the place where his foot is, and who has seen him there, for it is told me that he is very cunning." Saul gathered 3,000 chosen men and went hunting. David heard. He and his men were on one side of a mountain. Saul's army was on the other. David was hurrying to get away. Saul was closing in. And Saul was going on one side of the mountain, and David and his men on the other side of the mountain. And David was hurrying to get away from Saul, as Saul and his men were closing in on David and his men to capture them. The tension is unbearable. This is it. Saul is about to catch David. A messenger came to Saul, saying, "Hurry and come, for the Philistines have made a raid against the land," saved by a Philistine attack. At the very moment of capture, Saul had to turn back to defend Israel. David escaped to En-Gedi. Saul returned from pursuing the Philistines and heard where David was hiding. He took 3,000 men to hunt him in the wilderness of En-Gedi. He came to some sheepfolds by the road, where there was a cave, and Saul went in to relieve himself. The king needed to use the bathroom. He went into the darkness of the cave for privacy. He didn't know that David and his men were hiding in the innermost parts of that very cave. And the men of David said to him, "Here is the day of which the Lord said to you, 'Behold, I will give your enemy into your hand, and you shall do to him as it shall seem good to you.'" This was it, the moment they had been waiting for. Saul was vulnerable, alone, defenseless. David could end everything with one thrust of his sword. Then David arose and stealthily cut off a corner of Saul's robe. He didn't kill him. He just cut off a piece of his robe, proof that he had been close enough to strike. But even this bothered David's conscience. "The Lord forbid that I should do this thing to my Lord, the Lord's anointed, to put out my hand against him, seeing he is the Lord's anointed." He restrained his men from attacking Saul. The king left the cave, unaware of how close he had come to death. David followed him out and called after him, "My lord the king!" Saul turned. David bowed with his face to the earth. "Why do you listen to the words of men who say, 'Behold, David seeks your harm'? Behold, this day your eyes have seen how the Lord gave you today into my hand in the cave. And some told me to kill you, but I spared you. I said, 'I will not put out my hand against my Lord, for he is the Lord's anointed.' See, my father, see the corner of your robe in my hand. For by the fact that I cut off the corner of your robe and did not kill you, you may know and see that there is no wrong or treason in my hands. I have not sinned against you, though you hunt my life to take it." He held up the piece of robe. The evidence was undeniable. "May the Lord judge between me and you. May the Lord avenge me against you, but my hand shall not be against you." David refused to take vengeance. He left it to God. Saul wept. "Is this your voice, my son David?" He lifted up his voice and wept. "You are more righteous than I, for you have repaid me good, whereas I have repaid you evil. And you have declared this day how you have dealt well with me, in that you did not kill me when the Lord put me into your hands." For a moment, just a moment, Saul saw clearly. "And now, behold, I know that you shall surely be king, and that the kingdom of Israel shall be established in your hand. Swear to me therefore by the Lord that you will not cut off my offspring after me, and that you will not destroy my name out of my father's house." He knew, he had always known, and now he asked only that David spare his family when the inevitable came. David swore. Saul went home. But David didn't follow. He knew better. David and his men went up to the stronghold. The moment of clarity would pass. The madness would return. David kept his distance. He was right. Some people can only see clearly for a moment. Then the darkness returns, and you cannot save someone who keeps choosing the darkness. Samuel died. And all Israel assembled and mourned for him, and they buried him in his house at Ramah. The prophet who had anointed 2 kings, who had judged Israel all his days, who had heard God's voice in the darkness as a child, he was gone. An era had ended. David moved to the wilderness of Paran. There was a man in Maon named Nabal, wealthy, with 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats. His name meant fool, and he lived up to it. The man was harsh and badly behaved. His wife, Abigail, was the opposite. The woman was discerning and beautiful. David's men had protected Nabal's shepherds in the wilderness. They had been a wall around them day and night. Not one sheep was missing. It was shearing time now, a time of feasting and generosity. David sent 10 young men to greet Nabal and request provisions. "Peace be to you, and peace be to your house, and peace be to all that you have. Please give whatever you have at hand to your servants and to your son David." A reasonable request. They had earned it. Nabal's response was contemptuous. "Who is David? Who is the son of Jesse? There are many servants these days who are breaking away from their masters. Shall I take my bread and my water and my meat that I have killed for my shearers and give it to men who come from I do not know where?" He pretended not to know who David was, insulting him as a runaway slave. When David heard this, he was furious. "Every man strap on his sword." 400 men rode with David. He was going to kill Nabal and every male in his household. One of Nabal's servants ran to Abigail. "Behold, David sent messengers out of the wilderness to greet our master, and he railed at them. Yet the men were very good to us, and we suffered no harm, and we did not miss anything when we were in the fields, as long as we went with them. They were a wall to us both by night and by day, all the while we were with them keeping the sheep. Now therefore know this and consider what you should do, for harm is determined against our master and against all his house, and he is such a worthless man that one cannot speak to him." Even the servants knew Nabal was a fool who had just made a fatal mistake. Abigail acted immediately. She gathered an enormous gift: 200 loaves of bread, 2 skins of wine, 5 dressed sheep, 5 measures of roasted grain, 100 clusters of raisins, 200 cakes of figs. She loaded the donkeys. She rode to meet David. She told no one, especially not her husband. When she saw David, she dismounted and fell on her face before him. "On me alone, my lord, be the guilt. Please let your servant speak in your ears, and hear the words of your servant. Let not my lord regard this worthless fellow Nabal, for as his name is, so is he. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him." She took responsibility. She acknowledged her husband's foolishness. She pleaded for mercy. And then she spoke prophetically. "And now, my lord, as the Lord lives, and as your soul lives, because the Lord has restrained you from blood guilt and from saving with your own hand, now then, let your enemies and those who seek to do evil to my lord be as Nabal." She saw what David couldn't see in his rage. If he killed Nabal, he would be staining his hands with the blood of vengeance. He would be taking justice into his own hands instead of leaving it to God. "When the Lord has done to my lord according to all the good that he has spoken concerning you, and has appointed you prince over Israel, my lord shall have no cause of grief or pangs of conscience for having shed blood without cause, or for my lord working salvation himself." She knew David would be king, and she was warning him, "Don't start your reign with unnecessary blood on your hands." David stopped. "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who sent you this day to meet me. Blessed be your discretion, and blessed be you, who have kept me this day from blood guilt and from working salvation with my own hand." He took her gifts. He sent her home in peace. "See, I have obeyed your voice, and I have granted your petition." Abigail returned home to find Nabal hosting a feast like a king's, drinking heavily, completely unaware of how close he had come to death. She said nothing until morning. When Nabal was sober, she told him everything. And his heart died within him, and he became as a stone. And about 10 days later, the Lord struck Nabal, and he died. The Lord struck him. David didn't have to. God executed the judgment David had been restrained from carrying out. When David heard, his response was praise. "Blessed be the Lord who has avenged the insult I received at the hand of Nabal and has kept back his servant from wrongdoing. The Lord has returned the wrongdoing of Nabal on his own head." Then David sent messengers to Abigail, asking her to become his wife. She came to him with 5 young women attending her. She rode on a donkey, and she became his wife. The woman who had saved David from himself was now joined to him. Her wisdom, her discernment, her courage, all would be part of his household. The Ziphites betrayed David again. "Is not David hiding on the hill of Hachilah?" Saul came with his 3,000 chosen men. He camped beside the road. David sent spies. He discovered exactly where Saul was sleeping, in the center of the camp, with his army around him. Abner, the commander, lay beside him. David asked who would go down with him into the camp. Abishai, son of Zeruiah, volunteered. They crept into the camp by night. Everyone was asleep. The Lord had made a deep sleep fall upon them. Saul lay sleeping with his spear stuck in the ground beside his head. Abner and his army surrounded him. Abishai whispered, "God has given your enemy into your hand this day. Now please let me pin him to the earth with one stroke of the spear, and I will not strike him twice. One thrust. It would be over." But David refused. "Do not destroy him, for who can put out his hand against the Lord's anointed and be guiltless? As the Lord lives, the Lord will strike him, or his day will come to die, or he will go down into battle and perish. The Lord forbid that I should put out my hand against the Lord's anointed." Instead, David took Saul's spear and water jug and left. No one saw, no one woke. They crossed to the other side of the valley, putting distance between themselves and the camp. David stood on the mountain and shouted, "Abner, will you not answer?" Abner woke, confused. "Who are you who calls to the king? Are you not a man? Who is like you in Israel? Why then have you not kept watch over your lord the king? For one of the people came in to destroy the king your lord. This thing that you have done is not good. As the Lord lives, you deserve to die, because you have not kept watch over your lord, the Lord's anointed. And now see where the king's spear is, and the jar of water that was at his head." Saul recognized David's voice. "Is this your voice, my son David?" "It is my voice, my lord, O king." And then David poured out his heart. "Why does my lord pursue after his servant? For what have I done? What evil is on my hands? Now therefore let my lord the king hear the words of his servant. If it is the Lord who has stirred you up against me, may he accept an offering. But if it is men, may they be cursed before the Lord. For they have driven me out this day, that I should have no share in the heritage of the Lord, saying, 'Go, serve other gods.'" He was being pushed out of his homeland, away from the places where God was worshipped. "Now therefore, let not my blood fall to the earth away from the presence of the Lord, for the king of Israel has come out to seek a single flea, like one who hunts a partridge in the mountains." A flea, a partridge. David minimized himself, showing the absurdity of the king of Israel hunting one fugitive. Saul's response echoed his words at En-gedi, "I have sinned. Return, my son David, for I will no more do you harm, because my life was precious in your eyes this day. Behold, I have acted foolishly and have made a great mistake." David answered, "Here is the spear, O king. Let one of the young men come over and take it. The Lord rewards every man for his righteousness and his faithfulness. For the Lord gave you into my hand today, and I would not put out my hand against the Lord's anointed." And then a blessing that was also a prophecy. "As your life was precious this day in my sight, so may my life be precious in the sight of the Lord, and may he deliver me out of all tribulation." Saul blessed David. "Blessed be you, my son David. You will do many things, and will succeed in them." They parted. David went his way, and Saul returned to his place. It was the last time they would speak, and then David did something that seems impossible for a man of faith. He gave up. David thought to himself, "Now I shall perish one day by the hand of Saul. There is nothing better for me than that I should escape to the land of the Philistines. Then Saul will despair of seeking me any longer within the borders of Israel, and I shall escape out of his hand." After years of running, 2 miraculous deliverances, 2 promises from Saul that he wouldn't be harmed, David had lost hope. Even the man after God's own heart had moments when he couldn't see the way forward. Even the giant killer had days when the giants seemed too many. Even the anointed king had seasons when the crown felt like a curse. If you've ever felt like giving up, you're in good company. David felt it too. The difference is what happens next. He took his 600 men, their wives and families, and went to Achish, king of Gath. And when it was told Saul that David had fled to Gath, he no longer sought him. David's calculation worked. Saul gave up the hunt. But David was now living in enemy territory, owing allegiance to a Philistine king. David asked Achish for a town of his own. "If I have found favor in your eyes, let a place be given me in one of the country towns, that I may dwell there. For why should your servant dwell in the royal city with you?" Achish gave him Ziklag, a town in the south far from Gath. David lived there for a year and 4 months. During that time, David conducted raids, but not against Israel. He attacked the Geshurites, Girzites, and Amalekites, ancient enemies of Israel who lived in the south. He left no survivors, no one to report what had actually happened. When Achish asked where he had raided, David lied, "Against the Negeb of Judah," or "against the Negeb of the Jerahmeelites," or "against the Negeb of the Kenites." He claimed to be raiding his own people, turning traitor to Israel. And Achish trusted David, thinking, "He has made himself an utter stench to his people Israel, therefore he shall always be my servant." Achish believed David had burned his bridges with Israel. He had no idea that David was actually destroying Israel's enemies while pretending to destroy Israel's allies. It was deception. It was ugly. But David was surviving. The Philistines gathered their armies for war against Israel. Achish said to David, "Understand that you and your men are to go out with me in the army." This was the moment David had dreaded. Fight against his own people, against Saul and Jonathan. "Very well, you shall know what your servant can do." An ambiguous answer. David was stalling, hoping for a way out. "Very well, I will make you my bodyguard for life." Achish promoted him. The trap was closing. David marched with the Philistine army toward Jezreel. He was about to face Israel in battle. Samuel had died, and all Israel had mourned for him and buried him in Ramah, his own city. The narrator reminds us. Samuel was gone. The prophet who had guided Saul rebuked Saul, delivered God's messages to Saul. He was dead. And Saul had expelled all mediums and necromancers from the land, following God's law against communicating with the dead. Now the Philistines were coming with their full force. Saul gathered his army. He saw the enemy camp. And he was afraid, and his heart trembled greatly. This was not the young man who had once been filled with God's Spirit and had defeated the Ammonites. This was a broken king, haunted by years of pursuing David, tormented by the evil spirit, abandoned by God. And when Saul inquired of the Lord did not answer him, either by dreams or by Urim or by prophets. Silence, complete silence. The God who had once spoken through Samuel, through the priests, through dreams, said nothing. Saul was facing the greatest battle of his life, and heaven was closed. What do you do when God stops answering? Saul made the worst possible choice. Then Saul said to his servants, "Seek out for me a woman who is a medium, that I may go to her and inquire of her." The king who had banned mediums now sought one out. The man who should have been leading Israel in prayer was turning to the dark arts. His servants knew of a woman at Endor. Saul disguised himself. He put on other garments. He went by night with 2 men. "Divine for me by a spirit, and bring up for me whomever I shall name to you." The woman was suspicious. "Surely you know what Saul has done, how he has cut off the mediums and the necromancers from the land. Why then are you laying a trap for my life to bring about my death?" Saul swore by the Lord, the terrible irony, that she would not be punished. "Whom shall I bring up for you?" "Bring up Samuel for me." When the woman saw Samuel, she cried out with a loud voice. Something happened that she didn't expect. This was not a normal séance. Something real appeared. "Why have you deceived me? You are Saul." She recognized her king, perhaps because whoever appeared knew things only Samuel would know. "Do not be afraid. What do you see?" "I see a god coming up out of the earth. An old man is coming up, and he is wrapped in a robe." Samuel's robe. The robe he had worn in life, the robe whose corner Saul had torn when Samuel turned away from him. And Saul knew that it was Samuel, and he bowed with his face to the ground and paid homage. Samuel spoke. "Why have you disturbed me by bringing me up? I am in great distress, for the Philistines are warring against me, and God has turned away from me and answers me no more, either by prophets or by dreams. Therefore I have summoned you to tell me what I shall do." Samuel's response was devastating. "Why then do you ask me, since the Lord has turned from you and become your enemy? The Lord has done to you as he spoke by me, for the Lord has torn the kingdom out of your hand and given it to your neighbor, David." Nothing had changed. The sentence pronounced years ago still stood. "Because you did not obey the voice of the Lord and did not carry out his fierce wrath against Amalek, therefore the Lord has done this thing to you this day." The disobedience with the Amalekites, the spared livestock, the living Agag, that failure was still echoing. "Moreover, the Lord will give Israel also with you into the hand of the Philistines, and tomorrow you and your sons shall be with me. The Lord will give the army of Israel also into the hand of the Philistines. Tomorrow, you and your sons, with me." Saul would die. His sons would die. Jonathan would die. Then Saul fell at once full length on the ground, filled with fear because of the words of Samuel. And there was no strength in him, for he had eaten nothing all day and all night. The king collapsed. Terror and exhaustion overwhelmed him. The woman showed him kindness, ironic that a medium would be more compassionate than Saul's own court. She insisted he eat. She slaughtered a calf. She baked bread. And he ate. Then they rose and went away that night. Into the darkness, toward the battlefield, toward tomorrow. While Saul was consulting the dead, David was marching with the Philistine army. The lords of the Philistines reviewed their forces. David and his men were at the rear, with Achish. The Philistine commanders were suspicious. "What are these Hebrews doing here?" Achish defended David. "Is this not David, the servant of Saul, king of Israel, who has been with me now for days and years, and since he deserted to me, I have found no fault in him to this day?" But the commanders were furious. "Send the man back. He shall not go down with us to battle, lest in the battle he become an adversary to us. For how could this fellow reconcile himself to his Lord? Would it not be with the heads of the men here?" They remembered the song, "Saul has struck down his thousands, and David his 10,000s. They didn't trust him. They feared he would switch sides in the middle of battle. Achish apologetically dismissed David. "As the Lord lives, you have been honest, and to me it seems right that you should march out and in with me in the campaign. Nevertheless, the lords do not approve of you. So go back now, and go peaceably." David protested, but perhaps with relief beneath his words. "But what have I done? What have you found in your servant from the day I entered your service until now, that I may not go and fight against the enemies of my lord the king?" He called Achish, "My lord the king," not Saul. He maintained his cover perfectly. "I know that you are as blameless in my sight as an angel of God. Nevertheless, the commanders of the Philistines have said, 'He shall not go up with us to the battle.' Now then, rise early in the morning with the servants of your Lord who came with you, and start early in the morning, and depart as soon as you have light." David was saved. He would not have to fight against Israel. God had provided an escape from the impossible position. David and his men marched 3 days back to Ziklag. When David and his men came to the city, they found it burned with fire, and their wives and sons and daughters taken captive. The Amalekites, the people David had been raiding, had taken revenge. While David was away with the Philistines, they had swept through, burned Ziklag to the ground, and carried off everyone, not killed them, taken them. David's 2 wives, Ahinoam and Abigail, the families of all his men, everyone. Then David and the people who were with him raised their voices and wept until they had no more strength to weep. Grown warriors, hardened by years of fighting and fleeing, sobbing until they collapsed. And then the situation got worse. David was greatly distressed, for the people spoke of stoning him, because all the people were bitter in soul, each for his sons and daughters. His own men turned on him. They blamed him, perhaps for the raids that had provoked this retaliation, perhaps for leaving Ziklag undefended. They were ready to kill him. This is one of the most important sentences in David's story. But David strengthened himself in the Lord his God. No prophet to encourage him, no Jonathan to strengthen his hand, his men ready to murder him, his family captured, everything destroyed. And David turned to God. This is what separates David from Saul. When Saul faced his darkest moment, he went to a witch. When David faced his darkest moment, he went to God. Both men were desperate, both men were afraid, both men had lost everything. But one strengthened himself in the Lord, and the other summoned the dead. This is the difference between a man after God's own heart and a man who has lost his way. He called for Abiathar the priest. "Bring me the ephod." He inquired of the Lord, "Shall I pursue after this band? Shall I overtake them?" "Pursue, for you shall surely overtake and shall surely rescue." Surely. Twice God said it. No doubt, no ambiguity. Go, and you will win. David pursued with 600 men, but at the brook Besor, 200 were too exhausted to continue. They stayed with the baggage. David pressed on with 400. They found an Egyptian slave in a field, collapsed, half dead from hunger and thirst. They revived him with food and water. He hadn't eaten or drunk for 3 days. "To whom do you belong, and where are you from?" "I am a young man of Egypt, servant to an Amalekite, and my master left me behind because I fell sick 3 days ago." Left to die. The raiding party had abandoned him. "Will you take me down to this band?" "Swear to me by God that you will not kill me or deliver me into the hands of my master, and I will take you down to this band." The Egyptian led them to the Amalekites, spread out over the land, eating and drinking and celebrating their plunder. David struck them down from twilight until the evening of the next day, and not a man of them escaped, except 400 young men who mounted camels and fled. A battle that lasted through the night and into the next evening. Total victory. David recovered all that the Amalekites had taken, and David rescued his 2 wives. Nothing was missing, whether small or great, sons or daughters, spoil or anything that had been taken. David brought back all. Everything, everyone. Nothing was missing. Some of the 400 men who had fought didn't want to share the spoil with the 200 who had stayed at the brook. Because they did not go with us, we will not give them any of the spoil that we have recovered, except that each man may lead away his wife and children and depart. But David overruled them. You shall not do so, my brothers, with what the Lord has given us. He has preserved us and given into our hand the band that came against us. Who would listen to you in this matter? For as his share is who goes down into the battle, so shall his share be who stays by the baggage. They shall share alike. What the Lord has given us. David remembered where the victory came from. It wasn't human strength, it was divine gift. And he made it a statute and a rule for Israel from that day forward to this day. A lasting principle: those who guard the supplies share equally with those who fight. Everyone has a role. Everyone shares the reward. David also sent portions of the spoil to the elders of Judah, to his friends, to places where he had been a fugitive. Here is a present for you from the spoil of the enemies of the Lord. He was building alliances. He was preparing for what was coming. The years in the wilderness were about to pay off. Now the Philistines were fighting against Israel, and the men of Israel fled before the Philistines and fell slain on Mount Gilboa. While David was rescuing his family, the battle Saul had dreaded was happening. And it was going exactly as Samuel's ghost had predicted. The Israelite army broke. They ran. They died. And the Philistines overtook Saul and his sons, and the Philistines struck down Jonathan and Abinadab and Malchishua, the sons of Saul. Jonathan, stop for a moment, let that name sink in. Jonathan, the prince who had loved David as his own soul, the friend who had strengthened David's hand in God when everyone else had abandoned him, the warrior who had once attacked a Philistine garrison with nothing but faith and his armor-bearer, the heir who had given away his crown because he knew God's will was more important than his own ambition. Jonathan, who had told David, "You shall be king over Israel, and I shall be next to you." He would never stand next to David. He would never see his friend crowned. He would never know the kingdom they had dreamed of together. Dead on Mount Gilboa. Sometimes the best people die in other people's wars. Sometimes faithfulness doesn't protect you from the consequences of someone else's sin. Sometimes you fall on a battlefield that was never supposed to be yours. Jonathan died because of his father's failures. And somewhere in the south, David didn't even know yet that his soul brother was gone. The battle pressed hard against Saul, and the archers found him, and he was badly wounded by the archers. Surrounded, wounded, his sons dead around him, his army fleeing. Then Saul said to his armor-bearer, "Draw your sword and thrust me through with it, lest these uncircumcised come and thrust me through and mistreat me." He didn't want to be captured alive. He knew what the Philistines would do to him, the torture, the humiliation, the slow death. But his armor-bearer would not, for he feared greatly. The servant couldn't kill the Lord's anointed, even at the king's own request. Therefore Saul took his own sword and fell upon it. Suicide. The king of Israel, who had been chosen by God, anointed by Samuel, filled with the Spirit, victorious over Ammon, fell on his own sword on a blood-soaked mountain, his sons dead around him, his kingdom in ruins. And when his armor-bearer saw that Saul was dead, he also fell upon his sword and died with him. Thus Saul died, and his 3 sons, and his armor-bearer, and all his men, on the same day together. And when the men of Israel, who were on the other side of the valley, and those beyond the Jordan, saw that the men of Israel had fled, and that Saul and his sons were dead, they abandoned their cities and fled. And the Philistines came and lived in them. The north collapsed. Cities were abandoned. The Philistines occupied Israelite territory. The next day, when the Philistines came to strip the slain, they found Saul and his 3 sons fallen on Mount Gilboa. They found the body of the king. So they cut off his head and stripped off his armor, and sent messengers throughout the land of the Philistines to carry the good news to the house of their idols and to the people. They did to Saul what David had done to Goliath. The victory song of the Philistines echoed through their temple. They put his armor in the temple of Ashtaroth, and they fastened his body to the wall of Beth-shan. The king's corpse, displayed like a trophy on a pagan city wall. But when the inhabitants of Jabesh-Gilead heard what the Philistines had done to Saul, all the valiant men arose and went all night, and took the body of Saul and the bodies of his sons from the wall of Beth-shan. Jabesh-Gilead, the city Saul had saved from Nahash the Ammonite in his first act as king. They remembered. After all these years, they remembered. And they came to Jabesh and burned them there, and they took their bones and buried them under the tamarisk tree in Jabesh, and fasted 7 days. They gave the king and his sons a proper burial. They mourned for 7 days. It was over. The reign of Saul, which had begun with such promise, ended in defeat, suicide, and desecration. Think about the tragedy of Saul's life. He started with everything: height, strength, the Spirit of God, the anointing of Samuel, the love of the people. He could have been the greatest king Israel ever had, but he feared people more than he feared God. He trusted his own judgment more than God's commands. He held on to power instead of holding on to faithfulness. And in the end, he lost everything: his kingdom, his sons, his sanity, his life. The man who had been too tall to hide ended up hiding among the baggage of his own failures. The man who had been filled with God's Spirit ended up consulting the dead. The man who had been anointed by Samuel ended up dying on a sword, his own sword. This is what happens when you reject God's word. This is the price of partial obedience. This is the end of a king who was chosen by the people but rejected by heaven. But in the south, a shepherd boy, now a man, was about to receive news that would change everything. The first book of Samuel ends here, but the story continues. David will hear of Saul's death and will weep, genuinely, deeply, mourning the king who had tried to kill him, mourning the friend he had loved more than anything. "How the mighty have fallen," he will sing. "I am distressed for you, my brother Jonathan. Very pleasant have you been to me. Your love to me was extraordinary, surpassing the love of women." David will become king, first over Judah, then over all Israel. He will conquer Jerusalem, bring the ark there, establish a dynasty that will last for 400 years and will ultimately produce the Messiah. But he will also fail. He will commit adultery, murder, and bring catastrophe upon his own family. He will learn that even a man after God's own heart can fall, and that forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. That, however, is the second book of Samuel. What we have seen in this first book is the transition from judges to kings, from the old order to the new, from Eli to Samuel to Saul to David. We have seen a barren woman's prayer answered with a prophet who would anoint kings. We have seen the glory depart from Israel and return in triumph. We have seen a man chosen for his height, who hid among the baggage and ended on his own sword. We have seen a shepherd boy chosen for his heart, who killed a giant and spared his enemy twice. We have seen friendship that transcended politics and rivalry. We have seen madness and murder, mercy and faithfulness. And through it all, we have seen God, working in the shadows, speaking in the silence, raising up and casting down, faithful to his purposes, even when his people were faithless. The Lord looks not on the outward appearance, but on the heart. To obey is better than sacrifice. The battle is the Lord's. These truths echo through 3,000 years because they are still true. They are true in your life, in this moment, as you face your own giants, your own wilderness, your own questions about what God is doing. Samuel heard God's voice in the darkness and answered, "Speak, for your servant hears." May we have ears to hear the same voice, calling us by name, calling us to faithfulness, calling us home.